My name is Patrice Douglas. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am licensed in California, Texas, and now Florida. So if you live in any of those states, I can provide services virtual. In California, I can provide them in person. I have a private practice called Empire Counseling and Consultation, which is in California, Texas, New York, and Florida, where I specialize in men's issues, anxiety, depression, addiction, and minority mental health. I've been featured in a lot of media articles such as BuzzFeed, Hello Giggles, O Magazine, Vice, and etc. I am also in my doctoral program at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology studying clinical psychology. I am one semester away from being completed. I am so excited that everyone has joined me today. Since I am in California, it is 7 o'clock my time, so it is very early, but I'm blessed to be here to be able to give you guys this information about anxiety and depression, because I think a lot of times we have a misconception about what it is. All we know is that a lot of people have it. It seems like everybody's complaining, and I think it takes away the seriousness of both illnesses, how they can really play a role in your life. So the topics of discussion we're going to talk about, so the objectives is: what is anxiety, what is depression, how does my lifestyle contribute to these illnesses as well as affect my life, and when is it time to see a therapist? So we're going to talk about anxiety. So what is anxiety? If you joined me in the last webinar, you've probably seen this infographic. If you follow me on any social media platforms or have seen it gone around, this is an infographic that I created a year ago this month that had the 6 signs of anxiety in Black women. So what is anxiety? It's a disorder that involves extreme fear or worry. Everyone has experienced anxiety in their lifetime in various levels of life. It is diagnosed by a mental health professional such as a therapist or psychiatrist. It can be lifelong or it can be short term, and it's very manageable. So when we talk about anxiety, everybody at some point has known what it felt like to have the bubble guts when it's time to, make a presentation or go somewhere that you're not familiar with or do something that, may be out of, your comfort zone. But for some people, anxiety can be so debilitating that they can't even leave the house. They don't eat, they don't sleep. It turns into panic attacks, which can lead to, rapid heart beating, sweating. They feel like they're having a heart attack. And so while everyone has experienced or deals with some type of anxiety in their life, there are moments where help is needed or other methods of support are needed to help them get by in life. So anxiety can be very debilitating to the point where you can't live life to the fullest, and it can create a lot of health effects, risks as well. So I don't know if you guys know, but there are 5 types of anxiety. So when we hear about anxiety, we just hear about people being nervous. But there's 5 different categories, and maybe some of you or all of you can relate to all 5, or there's one particular one that stands out for you. So the 2 that I believe that are talked about the most, especially with Summer Walker and her social anxiety and all that, I think the 2 that are mostly talked about is generalized anxiety and social anxiety. So generalized anxiety is that you don't have one particular thing you're anxious about, just overall you're just anxious about a lot. So it can be about meeting people for a dinner date. It can be getting up and going to work, what's going on with your coworkers, to going outside and worrying about, if you're going to get hit by a car, or people are going to be speeding on the freeway. It can be a lot of things. So there's not one specific thing that you're focused on. It's everything around you just makes you very anxious. Then you have social anxiety. The misconception about social anxiety is that you don't like to go to public places. That's not what social anxiety is about. It's about the fear of acceptance of others. So you may not want to hang out with a group of girls or a group of guys because you feel like they're going to talk about you, or because you're not familiar with the setting and you don't have control over certain aspects of where you are. You feel like you don't want to go, or you're just in fear, like, is everybody going to like my outfit? How are people going to perceive me? You can literally sit across from somebody, and if their face looks like they're disappointed in you or they have a problem with you, even though they could be thinking about totally something different and not even paying attention to you, that can make you feel anxious. Therefore, it's social anxiety. So you kind of avoid just hanging out with people in general. That is social anxiety. What that gets mixed up with is agoraphobia. Some people can't be in public spaces or closed circle spaces. So if you're at the mall, especially during Black Friday, which I never recommend, or around Christmas time. Like if you can go around, right when the store opens, that's the best thing to do, because once you start going in the middle of the day, there's too many people. So some people have a problem with being in large crowds or small spaces, or big areas where a lot of people can be in. So a lot of people think that that's actually what social anxiety is, when in reality that's agoraphobia. Those get mixed up a lot. You have separation anxiety, which we see in a lot of our children, where especially if they've dealt with some attachment issues with their parents, they may be in foster care, they're having a hard time attaching to an adult they feel like they can be secured in. When they finally get one that they feel connected to, they don't want to leave their sight. So if they're going to school and the parent has to leave, they feel very anxious, they start to cry, they start to have a tantrum. If they're left with anybody else other than the parent, they start to cry, they start to tantrum. Those are things that we call separation anxiety. I truly believe that there are adults out there that have codependency issues, can probably relate to separation anxiety, but this diagnosis is typically for adolescents. We also have selective mutism, so that is also a adolescent diagnosis. It's where you're so anxious in one particular setting that you don't even talk, but when you get somewhere else, you're like chatty catty. So that's for kids, right? So at school, they are radio silent. You wouldn't even know they knew how to talk, because they don't say anything. But when they get home, you just can't get them to shut up. So they're choosing to not talk at school because school makes them very anxious. Therefore, they're not able to talk. But because they're in their comfortable setting, they're able to talk fluently, which will be at home. We already went over agoraphobia. We have specific phobias. So it can be a fear of anything, fear of specific foods. It can be a different type of way that people are doing things, or a specific way that you need to do things. A specific phobia is considered an anxiety. So if you have a phobia like of holes or things like that, that when you see them, or dogs or cats or insects, when you see them, you get a certain fear that is just, it's like a cold rush over your body and you feel like you can't move. That is a form of anxiety, as well as you have the substance-induced and medical conditions. So I know nobody likes when I talk about this, but some of the drugs that we're using can cause anxiety. So if you're using, amphetamines, it can definitely be marijuana, alcohol. If you're using it on a continuous basis to the point where your body gets used to it, if there's a day you don't use it or you're trying to detox from it, this can even be nicotine as well. You can develop anxiety due to the withdrawals of the substances. And it also can be due to a medical condition. So we're going to talk about depression. So depression is a mental health disorder characterized by persistently depressed mood or loss of interest in activities, causing significant impairment in daily life. And so once again, if you've followed my social media, or you were in the last webinar, or you've seen this all and about in social media, I made this last year as well, a year ago to this month, where it was the 6 signs of depression in Black men. So the common signs in depression is loss of sleep or increased need for sleep. So you can sleep for 10 hours, but you can continue to sleep like that's not enough sleep. Or you're only sleeping 3 to 4 hours a day and you seem like you can't get any more than that. You have appetite changes. You're eating a lot. You're emotionally eating, or you're not eating enough. Excessive crying. You don't even know what's going on. You really don't have a reason as to why you're crying. You're just very emotional and the tears won't stop. Mood changes. You can go from being happy to irritable to very low and isolating. So if you have rapid mood changes and you don't know why, it could be due to depression. And hopeless thoughts, where you start thinking that, the future is not looking bright. You don't see any positivity in your world, and it's starting to look like you wouldn't mind if you didn't wake up, or you start having thoughts of, what would it look like if I didn't live anymore? Hopeless thoughts can definitely turn into suicide ideation, which can be very, very dangerous. And so when we look at the 6 signs of depression in Black men, of course, we have the anger, so that's the mood swing. You have the substance abuse. So a lot of people do turn to drugs when they're feeling depressed. That's their coping skill. So whether it's, marijuana, excessive drinking, alcohol, amphetamines, heroin, whatever the case may be, is they're just trying to numb so that they can feel better. So they do use substances. Sexual dysfunction, so their libido may be low. That can actually go for women as well. All of these can actually be tied to women as well, but for men, these are the six that we see the most in Black men. So their sexual interest is low. They're having suicidal thoughts, loss of focus. They can't concentrate. They feel really bad about not being able to concentrate, so that dark cloud is even getting darker over their head, and it can increase physical pain or chronic medical issues. So chronic pain and medical issues can definitely be tied to depression. If you're experiencing chronic pain and your quality of life has gone down, who would blame you for not feeling like there's a ray of sunshine over your head? Because you're in so much pain, it's hard to find the positive in something. So a lot of people that experience chronic pain also do have a diagnosis of depression. So just like anxiety, there are 5 types of depression. So we have major depressive disorder, persistent depressive disorder, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, disruptive mood dysregulation, and substance-induced medical condition. So the one that everybody is pretty familiar with is major depressive. There's not one particular thing that's going on. You just know that for, at least 2 weeks, you have these signs of you're not eating very well, or you're overeating, you're not sleeping, you're having these negative thoughts, you don't want to be bothered with anybody. Overall, you're just feeling very yucky. And unfortunately, it's not just due to a circumstance. Sometimes you really don't know why you're experiencing depression, or there could have been a life-changing event that happened, whether it's bereavement, so you lost a loved one, or some traumatic event happened where you had trauma, and so you're starting to develop PTSD. There are many reasons why depression may happen, but this is the common category that you will see mostly. Also, major depressive disorder does have the seasonal affect disorder, which is where you can get depression depending on the season change. It used to be part of the DSM, but they took it out, so that's not a main category, but it does fall under the major depressive disorder. Then you have the persistent depressive disorder, which is like major depression, but it's for 2 years. So you do have people that throughout the years, they just fall into these episodes of depression and they're not able to get out. These are for people that experience it for at least 2 years or more. So they're chronically dealing with clinical depression, and most times they should be on medications at that point. Then you have the premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So this one, a lot of women can relate to. This is typically a female disorder where maybe a week to a few days before your cycle, up until maybe a few days into your cycle, you experience signs of depression. So you're feeling very low. We even see like your posture change, like you just feel very down. You have, not negative thoughts, but you just feel really bad about yourself, and you're having these mood changes. This is not PMS, it's PDD. And a lot of women experience this right before their cycle or a little bit into their cycle, and then after that, they're fine. So it definitely relates to the menstrual cycle. And so if you feel like you're experiencing that, there are things that you can do. The first step I would say is talk to your OBGYN about some of the things that you can do about this disorder. Disruptive mood dysregulation is more for the kiddos. So it's the kiddos that have tantrums. They're busting out the seams with punching and hitting things and just being all out, a mess. 9 times out of 10, they're experiencing disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. So they're not feeling very well. They're not able to identify what's going on, as we talked about in the last webinar. Kids won't come out and say I'm depressed unless they've been reading articles and they're around people that know what depression is. But sometimes they're acting out, or their up and down moods may be due to a type of depression. And then, of course, we have substance-induced / medical conditions. So back to the drugs. Drugs can make you feel depressed too if you're not using them, or they can cause, while you're using them, lower moods and you're not understanding what's going on, and that's why you up the dosage of what you're using, as well as a medical condition, chronic pain. If you're dealing with any type of illness, the traits of depression can be looming because of that medical condition. So I don't know if you knew, but depression and anxiety are best friends. So if you look at this chart, you'll see that depression and anxiety have their own symptoms, but right in the middle, they share a lot of things. So depression and anxiety relate in restlessness, so not being able to sleep, feeling very jittery, just not being able to calm your body down. You have trouble thinking, concentrating, or making decisions. People may say, oh, that's your anxiety talking, or that's your depression talking, because you don't trust any of the things that you feel is the best thing to do for yourself. Excessive worrying, you're worrying about everything all the time. That's not necessarily just an anxiety trait. That can be a depressive trait, because you feel like if life is not getting any better, no matter what you say or do or who you're around, nothing gets better. Then you're always going to be thinking about, is the future even worth it? If what am I doing is enough for me to feel better? You're always worrying about everything. So that's not always an anxiety trait. Unexplained physical complaints such as headaches or stomach aches. A lot of people with anxiety do experience the bubble guts, the heart palpitations. Sometimes they may experience headaches, or maybe flu-like symptoms where like their body temperature goes up and down. They may have body aches, but a lot of times that deals with depression too, because your body is trying to fight these negative thoughts. And so when you're having these negative thoughts, your body is going into overdrive of trying to compensate and take care of the things that you need to do by revving up your system, such as like the flight or flight response. And so if your body's working overtime but your brain is not meeting you halfway, then of course your body's like, well, I'm about to shut down, or I'm starting to hurt because I'm going into overdrive and nothing's getting better. And of course, agitation. You can be agitated because you're overwhelmed, or you can be agitated because nothing seems like it's getting better. And so those traits definitely share between anxiety, depression, and of course, you can see the differences between the two with the sadness versus feeling powerless or nervous. So yes, you can experience both, and you can have a dual diagnosis of both anxiety and depression. So the question always comes up is, what can contribute to anxiety or depression? So a lot of things can contribute to anxiety, depression. Some that I listed as past trauma experiences, so PTSD. If you've experienced any type of trauma, and we're not talking about just military stuff, PTSD, and I talk about this a lot on my social media, it can be as to people as small as watching a news segment about police brutality or someone getting murdered, to a car accident, to witnessing a crime or being a victim of a crime, to the military. So if you have had past trauma, as much as a lot of people don't feel like they've experienced trauma, that can lead to you feeling overwhelmed or hesitant to do certain things, or feeling like your quality of life has gone down because you have too many flashbacks. You're afraid to go to certain areas, therefore you're beating yourself up for not being stronger than you are. Substance abuse, so that can contribute to anxiety, depression, like we talked about. Marijuana use, alcohol, opiate abuse, all these things, when you become dependent on it, when you try to detox from it, or if you don't have enough of it, say you're broke for the weekend, you can't afford your fix per se, that can heighten up your anxiety because you've been coping with your anxiety by numbing it. Or your depression hits you hard because you don't have that numbing tool to get through your day. Sometimes the traits can be inherited from family members. If you grew up in a house where your mother, would lay in bed and not get up for a week, or, would not tend to you because she wasn't feeling well, or overly anxious and wouldn't let you go places, or, snapped at people because they were very overwhelmed with things, they kind of showed you, well, they did show you that they are experiencing some type of anxiety and depression. Unfortunately, some of them were not using medication to cope with it. So in turn, because of the biological mechanisms of family and how it can be inherited, as well as environmental, sometimes you can get these symptoms and illnesses from your family members. 9 times out of 10, when I talk to someone that is experiencing clinical depression or anxiety, they can name at least 1 to 2 people in their family that experienced it as well, but it went undiagnosed. And of course, stressful environments. So, I mean, in this day and age, the climate of the, politics, jobs, income, being outside, shootings, All of these things can lead to a panic. It can lead to feeling overwhelmed about situations and wondering, if it's safe to be out in the streets and it's safe to do this and it's safe to do that, or just feeling like, life overall seems very negative. This can also lead to symptoms of anxiety and depression that can lead to a diagnosis. So some of the treatment options for anxiety and depression is medicine regulation. So I know a lot of people are not fans of psychotropic medications. I can understand, because there are a lot of effects that can happen when you take these medications. But hey, sometimes, just sometimes, talking about it, acknowledging it is not enough. Sometimes we got to regulate those hormones. We got to regulate what's going on in our mind, so that when we do go to therapy or we are using our coping skills, it's a little bit more smoother. And what I will say about medication regulation, I am not a psychiatrist, so I can't give any recommendations on what's the best medication to take or what the dosage is. What I do know is that for anxiety, depression, it doesn't have to be a lifelong treatment option. You can be on anxiety medications and get off, and sometimes you may have to get back on. The same thing for depression. Just because you have to take it doesn't mean that you have to be dependent on it for the rest of your life. Sometimes it's just needed to get you a little bit more stable, and then with therapy and the other things that you're doing, you can, manage your anxiety, depression very well. So I want anybody that is thinking about taking medications or hesitant about it to just go to see a psychiatrist, ask all the questions, get informed, and if it's recommended for you to try, if you tried everything else and it seems like it's not working and medication is your next option, I would try to explore it as much as you can and be open-minded, and just know that it doesn't have to be lifelong. But if you're going through a bad spot in your anxiety, depression, maybe this is needed to get you back on track. You also have therapy, so talk therapy, art therapy, music therapy. All these different therapies are awesome. They're also recommended if you are taking psychotropic medications. What we don't want to do is treat medicine as it's like a magic pill. Yes, it helps, balance out your hormones and things like that, where you need, so that you can make more decisions based off of logic and not emotion. However, you also need the coping skills that therapy can provide for you, so that the medication can continuously be effective. If you're only taking medication, you may feel better, but for the long term, you also need to get some coping skills. So there's different therapies that you can use for anxiety, depression. A lot of providers like to use CBT. For narrative, for depression, they may use narrative therapy or client focused therapy. You also have support groups. So there are tons of support groups that are out there for anybody that's experiencing anxiety, depression. It can be gender specific, so a woman only anxiety, depression group, or a men's only anxiety, depression group. It can be due to different groups. It can be for African Americans, it can be for entrepreneurs, it can be for new moms, whatever the case may be. Is there are support groups out there that can support, and it is more affordable than therapy, as well as it gives you an opportunity to be surrounded by people that are experiencing similar things that you're going through, so that you always don't feel alone. That's one thing about depression, is that it can isolate us so bad where we feel like the world doesn't care about us, not realizing that we are shutting out the world ourselves. And then, of course, stress management techniques. A lot of times we're feeling overwhelmed because we have a lot of stress going on, whether it's poor time management with work, trying to balance work, entrepreneurship, family, stuff like that, where it's becoming overwhelming. You can also use stress management techniques such as, maybe shutting everything down, 2 hours before you go to bed so you get better sleep, or sectioning off certain things of the day that you have to get done and certain things that you can do a different day so you're not being overwhelmed. These are the things that is great treatment options for anxiety and depression. So let's talk about the lifestyle. So I don't know if you guys know, and I know that food always comes up, I'm sorry, but foods can increase anxiety and depression. So the foods that can increase is alcohol, So if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling depressed, I know we want to go grab the bottle like Olivia Pope, or hit the bar for happy hour, but it's actually making your symptoms worse. And that's probably why when you do drink, you may feel like you have no filter, so whatever's coming out of your mouth, nobody can stop it, or you're feeling even more overwhelmed. It's because alcohol is not helping, it's just making it worse. Caffeine. I know everybody loves their Starbucks, their coffee bean, but caffeine will definitely make your anxiety worse. And so if you experience debilitating anxiety, the last thing that you need to do daily is fill that up by giving yourself more energy. So watch your caffeine intake. Added sugar foods, that will definitely increase your anxiety and depression. Conventional dairy creamer, gotta be mindful of that. White toast, you want to eat wheat toast instead. Soda and Chinese food, there are different, I don't want to say chemicals, but there are different things in Chinese food that will actually make you more stressed out if you're feeling stressed. And so if you want more information on as to why these different foods and drinks are not good for you, I can send you a list of the reasons why all these items are not good for you when you are experiencing anxiety and depression. Some foods that you can eat, and I'll just let you guys know, is like avocado. You can eat almonds, turkey, salmon, asparagus. These are things that you want to eat more of if you're experiencing anxiety, depression, or very high stress. So what are some activities you can do for anxiety and depression? Of course, exercising. I'm not saying that you have to go to a gym and like stay on a treadmill for an hour or whatever the case may be is. But even if you went to walk for like 10 minutes a day, or if you work like at a desk job, taking a few rounds around the building outside is really helpful. We just got to get our blood flowing in different areas and get that fresh air and get our bodies pumping. That will help us not be so involved in our minds, and it'll also help our body stay in motion, because one thing about anxiety and depression is it hits your body very hard. It can make it stand still, it can make it feel very sluggish, to the point where you don't feel like you want to do anything. So the more you get to moving, the more your symptoms can be manageable. You always have the option of journaling. I know that everybody thinks that I'm asking for like a Dear Diary type of format, but in reality it can be jotting a few things in your notes section of your phone, or just getting a regular notebook and just jotting whatever's coming to your mind. A lot of times when it comes to anxiety, we just have running thoughts in our mind that just circulates over and over and over, and that's the same thing for depression. So if you write it down, then it won't be stuck in your mind and it'll actually start leaving, so you'll feel more relief. As well as sometimes it's good to write down what you're thinking, and so when you read it, you're like, is that what's going on in my mind? I just made up that whole scenario, what's going on with me? So that's a coping skill that is very beneficial for people that don't like to talk about what's going on with them with others because they're afraid of judgment, or they just don't know where to start. Journaling is your best friend, because that paper will never judge you and it'll never leave you. Another activity that I like to recommend is a coping box. And I got this idea when I was working with adolescents as a TBS coach, which is basically just helping them with their behaviors. What we would do is we would get like a little plastic container, some of those, like that clear plastic container you get at Target or Walmart, where it has like the white lid. And what we would do with that box is we would put everything that makes you feel good. So whether it's chocolate, some people like the smell or the cooling sensation of sanitizer, so they would put that in there. When they feel overwhelmed, they like to chew gum, so gum would be in there. They would put headphones in there, in an MP3 player, iPod. I think they still make iPods, or just headphones so they can plug it into their computer or their phone. A little journal, scented lotion, some scented lotion with like aromatherapy oils in it, whatever makes them feel better. They would put this in this box, and so when they were feeling overwhelmed or feeling angry or something was going on, they would go get their box, they would use something in there to calm them down, to soothe them. And so even though I use that for kids, I totally believe that adults can do that too. So if you have a desk and you have somewhere you could put your box, put everything that makes you feel good. And when you're having a bad day at work, go in there and pick something out. Now, if it's food and stuff, make sure that you replenish your box, because when you really need it and it's not there, you're going to be pissed off. But if you have this box in front of you, whenever you're feeling out of whack, this is something that will center you and bring you back in. If you don't have a desk, you can get like a little makeup bag or a little bag if you're a gentleman, and just put the same things in there, and you can carry it around in your purse, in your car, wherever you need it. And so this is like your little happy place. So I really recommend everyone making a coping box or a coping bag. Listening to music, it may be trap music, it may be rock music. I would say whatever calms you down, not turns you up. Definitely music will help soothe your symptoms of anxiety, depression. Deep breathing, meditation. Everybody has a smartphone pretty much these days, and so there are a lot of free meditation apps that you can use that at any moment, at any time of the day, you can pull out your phone and do like a 5-minute meditation or deep breathing exercise. One of the great ones is the Calm app, but I think for most of the different ones that they have on the app, it does cost a fee. I know LeBron is currently the spokesperson for the Calm app, but it works very well. So if you like things like that, then the investment in Calm would be beneficial. If you're on a budget, there are plenty of other meditation apps out there that are free that you can get your meditation on with. Make a to-do list. Sometimes our anxiety tells us that we're overwhelmed and our thoughts are all over the place, and then you're upset about being all over the place, and then like you're punishing yourself, which is turning into a form of depression. So sometimes if you just make a to-do list of the things that you need to get done, it organizes your brain, it organizes your thoughts, and you're able to get things done a little bit more smoothly, and you don't feel so overwhelmed. And as you're doing them, I would cross them out. You can make a really big loud noise when you cross them out or check them off, so that it shows that you're accomplishing things and that you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing. So make a to-do list is always good for anxiety, depression. It gets you going. Clean your room and bathroom. Some people, to clear out their mind or feel better about what's going on, because they have no control over anything else going on in their life, such as work, family, other people getting on their nerves, but what they do have control of is their environment. Cleaning your room, bathroom gives you a sense of peace. It also helps with depression, because sometimes, depending on how bad our depression is, our surroundings can be very cluttery. So if you can clean your space, you may feel a sense of relief dealing with anxiety, depression. Play with your pet. Pets are amazing. They're amazing emotional support. So if you're feeling down or you're feeling anxious, go to your pet. Your pet pretty much knows, unless it's like a snake or a rat. I don't have either one, so I don't know if they know that you're upset, but I know for cats and dogs for sure, like if you pet them or your posture is different, or just there's something off about you, your pet knows, and they'll just sit with you and they'll let you pet them and just hang out with them. They are such great mood relievers. So if you have a pet, be around your pet more, and please be nice to yourself. Every webinar that I do, I always remind everyone that we're human beings, and depending on where you come from, what background you come from, some of our communities make it seem like life is hard, nobody has time for you to complain about it, and so when you complain about it, you feel very guilty. But at the end of the day, your higher power made humans equally, and so everybody has their tough moments, everybody has their good moments. And so when you're having the tough moments and the bad moments, be nice to yourself. The last thing that you need to do is beat yourself up for going through something that all of us go through. So some other activities that you can do for anxiety, depression, and these items are available on my website, download for free, and I will give you the address at the end of this presentation. I did make a template of 100 low budget self-care tips, so it can be from as small as, in the winter months, putting your comforter in the dryer and then putting on your bed so you can feel very toasty, to twerking in the mirror, to deep conditioning your hair, to unfollowing all those toxic, unhealthy accounts on social media. There's 100 different things that you can do that literally almost don't cost any money. The first thing that everybody says about self-care is like, oh, I don't have the money to get a massage. I don't have money to go on a vacation. It can be as simple as changing your diet. It can be as simple as getting an extra hour of sleep, or unfollowing a bunch of blogs on your social media and just following positive accounts. There's a lot of things that you can do for self-care, as well as I did create a worksheet. It's called Work It Out, and it's a stress, anxiety, and depression worksheet where it pretty much breaks down why are you experiencing the things that you're experiencing. Sometimes we get into episodes of anxiety and depression and we don't know where it's coming from. So this worksheet is going to help you break down where is it coming from so that you can either manage it better or maybe you can change up things. So it'll ask you like what time of the day it occurred, because that can make a difference. How long did it last? What were you feeling stressed about, anxious about? How did it affect you physically and mentally? Why are you stressed out about this? How did you manage to relieve it? And how can you resolve it? So if you continue to do this worksheet, you'll start to see the trends. And so you can actually start figuring out alternatives to certain things so that you're not feeling overwhelmed or anxious or depressed about certain things. Okay, so the number one question I get a lot is, do I need a therapist? Well, my answer is everybody needs a therapist, no matter if life is going well or if life is going bad. There's always an area of life that we can address and we can work on. There's always room for improvement for communication skills, relationship qualities, and just overall just making sure that we're doing everything we can in life. So the short answer is yes. Do you need a therapist? Because yes, everybody does. But if you really are experiencing your self-esteem is decreasing, you avoid going out or sleeping too much, your relationships and stability is hurting, you're wanting to die and not be around anymore, if this is a constant issue in your life, then you absolutely need to run to the nearest therapist, because all the signs that I just mentioned are not normal. It may feel normal if you've been experiencing it and you've done nothing about it, or you may talk to other people and they're doing the same thing or things are worse for them and you feel like, well, I only, my self-esteem is bad, but I'm not over here thinking about wanting to harm myself. All of them are bad, and so it's time to seek help for what's ever going on. One thing about living with any type of mental illness, whether it's anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, all of it is manageable. It's not a terminal illness where once you have it, nothing's going to get better. But what you are in control of is getting the coping skills and managing it as best as you can. So some therapy sources that will be beneficial for you if you're looking to get a therapist, maybe switch to another therapist, get more information for somebody else that needs a therapist. Here are some resources. So the Therapy for Black Girls directory is awesome. Dr. Joy has a directory that is full of Black women. I believe there's also other minority therapists on there. If you're a man, you can find a therapist on there too. It's not just for women, but it is a great resource if you're looking for a Black therapist. She also has a podcast, Therapy for Black Girls, which she releases an episode, I believe, every Thursday. I'm going to give a shameless plug and say that I was session 49 for angry Black women. But if you're looking for a therapist, this is a really good place to go, as well as the Therapy for Black Men directory. They're a little bit newer, so their directory is not as full as Therapy for Black Girls, but once again, it is a very good resource if you're looking for a therapist. You also have Melanin and Mental Health directory. So this one is full of different minorities, primarily Hispanic, Latino, and African American. You have Open Path. So if you're looking to get into therapy, but your funds are pretty tight, or your deductible is too high for your insurance, and so you need like a lower cost way of getting therapy, Open Path has a bunch of providers that offer therapy, I think as low as $50 or $40. The highest is $60, and it can be virtual or it can be in person. You also have Psychology Today, which is the #1 search engine for all therapists. Unfortunately, it does not allow you to filter race, but it does allow you to filter if you're looking for a male, female, what type of insurance, and what area specialty that they're in. And you also have My True Circle, which is a great platform that was developed by a Black man, a mental health advocate, where you can get virtual therapy, and it also has a directory of therapists that offer virtual counseling. One thing I will say as a Black woman and a mental health professional that is a Black woman, I know that a lot of people express that they are looking for a Black therapist and they can't find it in their area. One of the hacks that I would say that works is if you are open to virtual counseling, even though you feel like I need to be in the office to get my healing, that's not necessarily true. But if you're open to this, explore virtual counseling. One thing that is awesome about virtual counseling is that the therapist just has to be licensed in that state. So the nearest therapist, Black therapist that could be near you, maybe 45 miles. Well, you're not going to drive 45 miles, every week or every 2 weeks to go see this therapist. But what you can do is, get on that laptop or get on your phone and have a face-to-face virtual conversation with the therapist and get the support that you need. So if you're having a hard time finding a specific therapist, you may want to explore virtual counseling because that'll give you such a bigger broad of options for therapists versus trying to find an in-office therapist. So if you are interested in following me, I am on all social media platforms. So on Instagram, you can find me at the Patrice Nicole. Facebook and Twitter, it's Patrice N. Douglas. If you want to email me, you can email me at patricendouglas@gmail.com. If you're interested in my services in any of the states that I mentioned, California, New York, Texas, and now Florida, you can look at empirecounseling.net. If you want to check out my personal website with all the different media contributions that I've done and it's overall who I am as a person, you can visit me at patricendouglas.com. And so I am open to questions.
And I think it's probably best if they could either raise their hand if they want to speak. Otherwise, I'm recommending that you type in the area and send a message. Let me just see, let's see. Is there anyone here? I don't think I see anyone. We don't have any questions? No, let's see. No, it doesn't look like we have any. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or you can type it in the chat space.
Yes, any questions you guys may have, whether it's about therapy. I can't give any diagnosis, of course, because I'm not seeing you guys individually as clients, but you have any questions about anxiety for yourself or someone that you love, please, please, please feel free to ask them.
Hello? You can hear me?
Oh, yes, okay. Hi. We can hear you.
I had a question. Yes, I had a question about the food allergies that triggers anxiety. I experienced that from childhood, and it's been about 3 years now, and I've been doing the therapy with it, but I've been experiencing it, the change of the diet and trying to find out all the things that would trigger it. And I did a study, and I had a book on abnormal psychology, and it's our resources that's triggering this for me. And I remember from the day I started having trouble with food. And now I see like my family members, they finally catching on. It's the food that we're eating, and our resources are not being properly prepared in our own country. They have it traveling, and they have to gas it, and they have to do all these things to get it here. And I don't think the people that's in charge of our food industry knows that it's having a negative effect, because majority of that food is coming into our neighborhoods, like minority neighborhoods. The rich and the people that is part of this, they don't eat none of that food. I never see them in the store purchasing none of the food that they service us. Never see any foreigners shop in our neighborhoods. They don't support our community, but yet we just get all our resources from them. And I found myself where I couldn't really eat anything. I had to find an alternative. And I'm afraid to even tell the doctors what my alternative is, because I think they're going to try to do something to that too.
Yes, I can agree that a lot of our foods, especially like fruits and vegetables, have pesticides and things like that. And over time, even with the meats and, hearing about, the different colorings that they do to make it seem like it's fresh, but in reality, it may be older meat. I can agree that a lot
Mhm.
of our foods have a lot of negative effects that over time, I think has shown that it's affecting our mental and our physical health. And I think that's why a lot of people have like gardens in their homes, or different communities have like a gardening area where people can go and plant things, because it is best to eat as organically as possible. So you are right that our foods and what they put in it is definitely contributed. It can contribute to mental health concerns as well as physical.
Well, what I've recently learned from my doctors, because they're telling me that my allergies are so severe, I can't have anything that's shells. So I'm like, so that's everything I ate my whole life. You're telling me, I'm hurting myself and I don't even realize it?
Yeah,
Because it could
can
be
be very
anything.
deep. Yes.
And I have trouble with my environment because I did the allergy test and I'm allergic to people. So if you eat that type of food, it'll have a negative effect on me too. So I like to avoid people because I could smell what they ate. And it doesn't, it makes my body go into a fight and flight mode. And it's not, I won't say anything because I'm feeling the chemical reaction. So I usually had to come up with solutions where I keep a scarf at all times. So when I smell something, I have to breathe through my mouth because it will mess with my chemistry if I inhaled it. And certain people, they eat a lot of meat. And in the Black community, it's a lot of meat eating, and I can't be around them. I could smell the stench, and then I look at how other people in other cultures react to the same smell because I know they smell it. They smell it, and they respond like that. That's why they don't speak to us. But I'm just saying, in my community, I'm trying to set up something where the support group can talk about things to the alternative things that we can do, so we don't always have to be somebody else helping us with this problem. We can help ourselves because now we know what the problem is.
Absolutely. I do agree that we can definitely educate ourselves more and get more education about, the different things that are going to these foods that we're eating all the time, and look for different alternatives to eat better and just be more aware of what we're putting into our bodies. I think that we're more health conscious more now than ever, and it's starting to, people are starting to really understand that what they're putting into their body may not be necessarily 100% natural, and it can play a role into how we live our life and how it's affecting us health wise. So I agree, and I think that your statement is very spot on, and it was needed.
Thank you. So first of all, we have well, not necessarily a comment, just said, well, it is a comment. This was great. No questions. Thank you for doing this. There's also, in general, what happens when you feel like therapy and medication aren't working? Like people that are close to you say they can tell you're different, better, but you don't feel any different.
That is a very good question. So I mean, I don't want to be your therapist right now, but one of the things that I would ask is, why, if everybody sees a change in you, why are you not convinced that you're changed? Because sometimes when we're dealing with a lot and we're going to get the help, and we're doing all that, sometimes we've been in pain for so long that it scares us to be successful. And so sometimes our mind makes us think like we're not getting any better, we're not improving. Therefore, you live in the place of feeling like you're not doing enough and things aren't going to get any better, but then you have people telling you that they see a change. So it kind of goes back to the thought process of, are you acknowledging that things have gotten better? Are you acknowledging that change is scary and that people are seeing the difference? And so maybe it's time to start focusing on what people are seeing, so that your mind can catch up with the positivity instead of staying in the negative. Because if people are seeing a change in you, it sounds like something's working for you. But the buy-in that you feel, I don't know what you're looking for to feel like you had a aha, I'm starting to feel better, but that's what you're searching for. And so that would be my question to you, is what exactly is the aha moment, or the yep, I'm doing better, that you're looking for, that you're not getting? If you can't answer that, then you may already be doing well, but because you've been in your thoughts for so long of negativity, it's really hard for you to break through and see the positivity. Hopefully that wasn't too long-winded, and hopefully that wasn't too therapy, but I can't help it sometimes. Sorry. I did see another question came up. Thoughts on using marijuana to manage anxiety instead of medication?
One on my end.
Okay. So I will disclose that I am a clinic director of an outpatient substance abuse agency. So as far as marijuana goes, I'm definitely not, you never should use it. But I believe it depends on how you're using it. If it's something that you're taking a few puffs, after work, and it's just something to, calm you, that's one thing. But if we're smoked out all day, or if you don't have weed, and you find yourself being very agitated all over the place, you just created an addiction. And so I would not say that you should use marijuana to cope with anxiety instead of medication. It all depends on how important weed is to you, marijuana. Like I said, if it's your life, and if you go to a state that it's not legal and you can't smoke it, and you're falling apart that entire time that you're there, then you're not really coping with your anxiety. You're masking your anxiety. So it just depends on how you're using your marijuana. I would say that I'm 420 friendly, even though I don't use it, but I think it's all about how we're using it. And trust and believe, I have a ton of clients at my agency, because I see federal probation, and unfortunately it's still illegal for them, so they can't smoke it. But the amount of dependence that they have on marijuana, and how it's affecting their physical, because some people are actually finding out that their body is rejecting marijuana because they smoke it so much too. If they can't get their hands on it, the world falls apart. You're not coping with your anxiety or depression, you're masking it. And so you got to be very mindful of that. So I hope that answered your question. Like I said, if you're using it, as like you're chilling out, you're taking a few hits here and there, and that's calming your anxiety down to where you can manage it, that's one thing. But if you find yourself having to be smoking 1 to 3 blunts a day or more than that, and if you don't have it, your world falls apart, no, you need another alternative than marijuana.
The next one, thank you for your presentation. Do you see much mental health challenges with people who are dealing with chronic conditions?
Do I see an increase in mental health conditions with people?
Do you see that, I guess I should translate. Do you see that, I guess it would be much a high mental health, you see that there's a lot of mental health challenges with people who are dealing with chronic conditions? I'll just reword it.
Oh, yes. 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 I just had a family member that I talked to. They couldn't stand me for me telling them that they're experiencing depression, but in reality is that their chronic pain, their quality of life, to where every day they would wake up in pain, they would breathe and be in pain. When we have chronic conditions, especially medically, yes, you do see an increase in anxiety, depression, hopelessness, because if your quality of life seems like it's not improving, and you're doing everything humanly possible to feel better, and you're still feeling this type of pain, yes, you're gonna experience some mental anguish. You're gonna experience some mental problems. So chronic medical conditions and mental health definitely go hand in hand, and that's why I put in the presentation about the different types of anxiety, depression. It can be medical condition induced, because I think that's important to recognize that if you're dealing with a debilitating illness, a chronic illness, there is a high chance that it is going to turn into a mental health condition as well. So absolutely, we do see a lot of people that deal with chronic illnesses or chronic medical conditions that also have debilitating mental health issues. They definitely go hand in hand.
And I will just add to that, Patrice, dealing with HIV/AIDS for so many years, a lot of our medical providers at the onset of the diagnosis of being diagnosed with HIV, they immediately partner the person with a mental health provider. And what we've seen over the years, regardless of where you are in life at that moment, although the HIV diagnosis, of course, is devastating to many people, but the goal is to help you manage it. But we just find that it allows people to deal with things that normally they would not have dealt with had they not been diagnosed. So the correlation is very important to the treatment care and long-term care, and how people manage their, their medication and adherence and things like that. So mental health is actually something that we have been dealing with for many years around HIV/AIDS.
Very, very valid point. I'm glad that you brought that up.
Let me see. I don't think anyone else, any other questions? Raise your hand, or otherwise it's 10:58, and we want to thank everyone for joining us. I hope you all definitely got something out of the presentation. I myself, every time I hear these presentations, learn something different. Would encourage you all to join us for our next webinar, which is March. I'm sorry, my screen just went blank on me. Do you have the date?
March 7th.
March 2nd, and 7th. We'll do 7th. Okay, so it's March 7th at 10 a.m. We invite you all to join. I will be sending, as soon as this goes off, you'll automatically get a survey. If you could please complete the survey, it allows us to improve our webinars if necessary, or add to them. And we'd like to hear ideas of other topics you would like to hear about. So thank you very much, Patrice. And I'd like to thank everyone and have a great day. Oh, just really quick, we have this repeating this evening. So if you know anyone that's interested or you want to recommend it, please forward the link around and they can participate this evening. Thank you very much.